The piercing thing is interesting because I hear people all the time tell me these stories. I got a piercing because my fertility journey ended, or I'm getting divorced, or I just got dumped by my boyfriend and I'm seeking hot girl shit for the summer. My parents always said that what we do is a public service. We're not doing brain surgery, we're not running a nonprofit, but I think that giving people the space to feel like they're coming in and it's sacred and special and they're wearing this thing that makes them remember a moment in time.
Welcome back to The Materialist. My name is Mark Bridge. I'm the founder and CEO of At Present, Matchmaker to Extraordinary Jewelry, and I am your host. On the pod today, my friend Alysa Teichman, the founder of Wildlike and co-owner of Elong, I never get this right.
And Teichman. My parents gave me a lot of hard names to deal with.
Why didn't you start a business called like Smith and Daughter? That would have been a much better way of doing it. Alysa Teichman.
Nailed it.
I was uncertain about it at that time. I'm here with my friend Alysa, who's in the jewelry business, and I'm delighted that you are here.
Thank you, Mark. I always love being with you, and I feel like we've always bonded over the fact that we're both nepo babies.
It's an important thing and maybe problematic in the jewelry world, in which it's one of the only ways in. And maybe that's a blessing and a curse. It certainly makes it more challenging for people to get in the business, and sometimes it makes it more difficult for people to get out of it also. But Alysa has one of the more creative concepts in the jewelry world. Why don't you tell us your origin story? Where do you come from, and what have you built and are you building?
So I guess my origin story starts in Dallas. I'm from Dallas, and that's how we met. I went to high school with your lovely wife, Julia. She would drive me home from newspaper layout at midnight. And
that newspaper was stacked with talent.
I know, right? It was the golden era. But yeah, Dallas, Texas. My parents were there. My dad is French, and my mom is from Arkansas. And the combo is me, and I grew up in Dallas, and I went to journalism school, which is ostensibly how I learned how to communicate. I went to Northwestern in 2009, which was a recession period, and I got some really interesting advice from people that was like, don't go into journalism, find something a lot safer, and that is retail. So that's how I ended up in retail. I worked in e-commerce for a while and ended up running parallel to my parents, and they hired me. They gave me a job offer. I realized I knew very little about running a business, and so I went to business school at NYU, and then I came back into their business, and that was in 2016. So I've worked for my parents, who have Elong 23, which is a designer jewelry company they founded almost 40 years ago, for a while. And then during COVID, I had this like very nagging, I was an overachiever always. Julia might remember, she was a few years older than me, but I had this very nagging thing in my brain that was like, you have to start another business, and it has to be in the body piercing space. We were doing a little bit of piercing at my family business, and it was such a source of energy and excitement and expression and just all the things that I really loved about what I did. And people would come and wait in line forever, like for hours, just to see piercers that like they could have seen in Dallas down the street. And so that was what made me come up with my new brainchild, which is Wild, and that was 2021.
And I do think that a lot of that ends up leading to, I don't know, I'm a student of history, and so I guess on some level I have to believe that where we come from and the experiences that we have shade or color what we end up doing and what we end up building. I'm interested in the story of I grew up around a jewelry business, and then I went out into the world and did some other things and then came back. And maybe I'm interested in that because it's similar to mine, except I never went away. What was that experience like for you?
I think that for me, there was always this, okay, I'm never going to join my family's business. I wasn't super girly growing up. I was really into writing and photography. I was really into creative things. I loved horses. There was literally no version of Little Alysa that was like, okay, this is written in the stars to go into the jewelry business. I think that when it clicked and when it happened was when I realized that, okay, all of these dots that I had, the fact that I was learning to communicate in journalism school and the fact that I could express myself and tell a story and all of that, I realized, oh, all these things I love to do, I can actually do when I run a jewelry business. So that was how it happened, was just all of these dots that connected in this really beautiful, serendipitous way.
I think that you and I probably share a belief that business is one of the great art forms, that this is a great creative endeavor, and that building a business is painting on a canvas. Is that the way you think about it?
I do. I think it's really creative, but the way that I look at it is I get to be creative and I love painting on a canvas and forging my own path and building my own legacy. But what I look at as the most special and unique part of what I get to do is just all the people that I get to meet along the way, which I guess that's like building your little village, as they say.
Where did that inspiration come from? Are you an extrovert? Were you always wanting to spend time meeting people?
No. This is a very weird question because I actually was talking about this in therapy yesterday. So little Alysa was very shy.
Therapy's the other side of the house. That's Julia's department.
Yeah, exactly. But
my wife, Julia, who, as Alysa mentioned, is how we met, is a psychotherapist.
It's my backup career. If I don't do jewelry, I think it's very interesting. But yeah, I think little Alysa it's funny because I always felt like I'm that girl, but just like a more evolved version of her. I think people talk a lot about how they change. I don't really think I changed. I just think I became better. So I think I started out as this very shy girl. And then in middle school and high school, I feel like my identity is that I was a late bloomer. And then I feel like I went away to college and I really felt so alive and so just inspired by all of the different people I met coming from all these different places with all these different stories. And then I think that kind of accelerated. And then other things just made me better and more extroverted. Like I have had I'm very lucky. I've traveled a lot. I have a French family, so I've gone to Europe a lot. I've met a lot of people. And then there is definitely something about this business that just makes you extroverted. You don't really have a choice.
Because you're standing on the floor, and if you don't make the sale, then nothing happens.
One of my friends told me about this thing called main character energy, and I'm always talking about it with my team because I think that regardless of what your job is in retail and in what we do, it's all about sales. Extroverted people are the ones that make sales. Introverted people, I'm not going to sell a necklace by just thinking about it. I have to go up to you and say, "Hey, you look cool." Like, it's a whole thing.
So did you make yourself into an extrovert, or you just leaned more? Would you adhere to this is a spectrum and I can choose to lean into whatever part of my personality?
I think that so after college, after I got my shit together, and first I was a shop girl for my parents when I couldn't get a job, and then I finally ended up where I wanted to, which was in New York. And I think that there was something about New York that made me a lot bolder in how I would communicate with other people. Like I was going to all this stuff. I was going to stuff alone. I was like eating alone at restaurants, talking to people. And I was like, oh my God, I love this connection piece. That's what my gift is, connecting with people and meeting people and like tying back to that journalism thing, like learning about people and asking them questions and figuring out like what it is that makes them tick. And I think through that process of just becoming a bolder person, I became extroverted. And I realized, wow, I don't always need to be out and about doing something, but I get energy from being out and about.
One of the things that I admire most about you is you make things happen. And every time I turn around, you're popping up on the news or you're doing some sort of an interesting partnership. Is that just now your sort of resting energy, or that's your equilibrium, or do you still have to summon the enthusiasm to make something like that happen?
I think sometimes, that's a good question. I think sometimes It just depends. Like right now, I have to be completely honest, I'm exhausted. There's a lot that goes behind all of that. And I think making it happen that's basically my job, is just making it happen. And sometimes, we can talk about this later, but sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like I don't really do anything at work. Like I'm just like out there making it happen. But
You're spinning the plates. Once you put your hand down, the plates stop spinning.
The plates stop spinning. And you're trying not to let any of the plates drop always, but...
Or to pretend like you're not the one spinning them.
Exactly. But no, I think I need the equilibrium to come too from being alone and from doing things that just ground me. Like I think for me, working out, it really helps get me mentally focused. It makes me feel better. I love walking my dog. It sounds like the most kind of mundane thing, but I love my dog and I love just that time to center and to really like get focused and clear on what my goal is for the day or the week. But yeah, making it happen it's hard work, Mark.
I would agree. What is the nature of the things that we are selling? You grew up around jewelry. You grew up around designer jewelry. What did you make of these widgets that your parents were peddling when you were 8 years old?
I tell my best friend from growing up. So my father's family sold schmatas. My grandparents were Polish. And I always say I sell sparkly schmatas. But no, this is the things that we're selling. They're not by any means things that people need, of course. But I think that the things that we sell make people feel good. And my parents always said that what we do is a public service. We're not doing brain surgery. We're not running a nonprofit. But I think that giving people the space to feel like they're coming in and it's like sacred and special and they're wearing this thing that makes them remember like a moment in time or a family member, or they just like it and it makes them feel like hot or cool or like they're part of something. I think that is so powerful. And then as the extension of that, I think piercing and body modifications, like that's the whole point. It makes people feel expressive. It makes people feel joyful. It helps people mark a moment in time. The piercing thing is interesting because I hear people all the time tell me these stories. Like, I got a piercing because like my fertility journey ended, or I'm getting divorced, or I just got dumped by my boyfriend and I'm seeking hot girl shit for the summer. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm like, okay. And I think that kind of storytelling in the piercing business has been just a really illuminating thing, because it's really, that's what my parents have always done. It's not modifying your body, but piercing is, of course.
No, but they are two similar things. And I am not a tattoo person. But
ditto, yeah.
Exactly. But I have always thought that the way people describe tattoos are similar to the way that I think about jewelry. And I think it's the way that you just describe piercing, which is these are each chapters of my life. And I remember where I was when I got that one, either that ring, that watch, that tattoo, that piercing. There is something that I think is qualitatively different about these objects than a pair of shoes or a handbag or all the other things. Tom Brown
sweater.
All these things that we like,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I do think there is something to that. And I think I'm curious, in the piercing business, do people come in with that idea? I'm so fascinated by this idea of push versus pull. Do we have to plant that seed, or people already have this sort of idea of, here was this moment in my life and I am choosing to mark it in this particular way?
The answer is both. I think that sometimes I can tell you that I got my first piercing when I was 12. It was right before my bat mitzvah, and that marked a moment in time of me becoming a woman. It's funny because I had a book club with my friend at the Wildlike store in Dallas, and the icebreaker question was, when did you get your first piercing and when did you get your first period? And everyone had a story about both. I think sometimes it's just, I want to...
You were reading Judy Blume?
Yeah. We were reading, what's that book called? Dear God, Are You There? It's Me, Margaret. Yeah. I think sometimes people want to come in on a whim with friends because it's a fun thing to do. It's just an activity. I think sometimes it's very measured. Had someone the other day who came into our New York store whose husband had an affair, and She said, I want to re-pierce my ears because he didn't like when I wore earrings and I want to feel like this is my own. And so I think it just runs the gamut. I think some people just always wanted to pierce their ears and it happens one day randomly. It's 1 million stories and they're all different.
Over the last few years, there's been a lot written, and I think you've been quoted in a number of these articles about kind of women embracing multiplicity of piercings. Where do you think that comes from?
I think a lot of that comes from, of course, during COVID, there was this moment in time where people were behind their computer screens and they wanted to feel expressive. I also just think it's this whole backlash against formal dressing. If you think about, I think about how I dress and even how that compares to how I used to dress in my 20s. Like, I wear jeans most every day. I usually wear either flats or sneakers. And I think that people have just embraced this more casual, more expressive way of dressing that feels more them. Like, it's not, there's none of this, oh, I'm an attorney, like I can't have multiple piercings. I do hear that sometimes, and I'm like, okay, give me a break. Yes, you can.
There's something else stopping you here. This is a red herring.
Or like my mom is gonna, I'm like, you're 30 years old. Like, who cares what your mom thinks? Is she paying
that might be something you need to talk about with your therapist.
Exactly. If your mom is paying your rent and she's paying for your life, then okay, don't get the piercing. But if she's not, then okay. But
the piercing is not the first problem.
Exactly. Thank you. But yeah, I do think it is this more casual, more expressive way of dressing. And I think the tattoo industry we're not tattoo people, but I think something like 30% of Americans have tattoos.
And I think the younger the age cohort is, the higher that percentage is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't answer it, but everyone is getting piercings. My friends, like all my friends, when I started this business, had one piercing, and now they're decked out. It's so fun to watch.
You're a good salesperson. You have
I'm the
shown.
enabler.
You said you got your first piercing when you were 12. Have there been significance in other piercings since then?
I got my second piercing right before I went to business school, which isn't actually that long ago. That's 11 years ago. So I used to just be a one piercing girly. I didn't grow up super pierced. I was a dork in high school, which is probably why I was friends with Julia. But
we think that's a high compliment.
Exactly. Yeah, dorks rule, but
the history of the world would show you're probably right.
I've had several birthday piercings. I'm not a big birthday person, but I think turning a year older is a blessing. I'm always happy that it's that versus the alternative. So I've had birthday piercings. Usually it's just me getting peer pressured by someone on my team, but I'm up to 18 now, it's a lot. I still have room.
What's the next one?
I think that I'm going to do you know what the doth is?
I do, but only because it's been a very successful SEO term for us.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to tell my web team about that.
Yeah. We published a blog like 4 years ago. We have no product to satisfy this need, but we get an enormous amount of traffic for that.
Wow. Yeah, some people say that it helps with migraines, but our piercers would say that's total BS. I think it's just a cool looking piercing. So several piercers told me that I didn't have the anatomy for it, but one of our piercers in New York, our treasured Sydney, says I do. So I feel like I might be in for that as 19.
Sydney planted the seed.
But I'm at 18. It's high. It's a lucky number.
It's a very important thing in your tradition. What has been the difference in running a business in New York versus in Dallas?
Ooh, great question. I think that Dallas, first of all, I think the people in New York are a lot more direct, just in general. So I feel like my employees in New York are a lot more direct than my employees in Dallas, which I think directness has pros and cons. I'm direct, but I also have that, like, I can turn on like the sweet sugar of Texas because I grew up there. I think that the clients are probably more direct in New York and maybe a little bit more diverse just because of where we are in NoHo. I think Dallas is an amazing business community. There's a lot of noise in Dallas, but I think because of the fact that I grew up in Dallas and I have built such a great community there via just growing up there and my family's business and everything I've been involved in, it was a lot easier to gain traction on the business than it has been in New York. New York has been, even though I thought, oh, I spent so many years living here and I have such a great network here, there's a lot more noise to cut through in New York than Dallas. So I would say those are the main differences. New York is just a lot more expensive than Dallas. Thank you, Captain Obvious, but...
No question. How do you balance your time? Where are you? I feel like every time I talk to you, you're in an airport.
So there's a movie that I didn't see called Everything Everywhere All the Time. I feel like that's going to be the cover of my book. I spend a lot of time in Dallas and I spend a lot of time in New York. And most days I'm in one of three stores. I have one Elong 23 store in Dallas, which I own with my parents. And then I have a Wildlike store in Dallas and one in New York. And when I'm in Dallas, like I was there last weekend, I'll go say hi, I'll meet a customer. I try to schedule my trips to Dallas around when we're doing events. And I think balance in general is just really hard, as it probably is for you. It's like, how do you balance running a business with having a family? Probably very hard.
Yes, I think it very much is. You went to business school, and in business school, you studied with a professor who's maybe after you were there received quite a bit of kind of notoriety in the world. Did you work for Scott Galloway?
I did. I was Scott Galloway's teaching fellow two or three times. I don't know. I love Scott, and I think he was, or maybe still is, controversial. I think a lot of people don't like him, but I always loved him, and I always thought that he had such an interesting way of looking at the world, and I just wanted to be around him as much as I could. Like his aura and everything he says and the way he says it and the way that he looks at brands and the way that he looks at his personal brand has just always been so incredible and inspiring to me.
What have you learned from him?
I think my favorite quote ever that I've heard that's so applicable to everything is nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. And I feel like it's become a mantra to me. Like I think about it when I have a great day, I think about it when I have a bad day, and it just levels me out. And I'm just like, wow, nothing I'm doing is that remarkable. Everyone has done this, and it really puts things into perspective for me.
And you have the capacity to mold your own. There's a certain determinism that one might follow from that I'm not sure would be exactly what you would say either.
Probably.
Yeah, it's not a race for the bottom or the middle. I don't know. Maybe that's worthy of exploration. What do you think in terms of your sort of agency? Do you feel like the harder you work, the better the results you get?
I've always worked really hard. I think that the harder, what do people say? Like the harder I work, the luckier I get. But really, I feel like the more I fuck up, the more I learn. And I think that gives me a lot of comfort, just knowing that you can try things and you can succeed, and then you can fail, and then you can retry, and then you can succeed. And I think that is like the true, in my opinion, that's the true definition of grit. And I think that's probably why we're friends. I feel like you're very much like that too.
I'm curious on that. My sense is you were a pretty type A student who did very well all the way along the way and got all of the accolades, which is anathema to the ability to get repeatedly punched in the face and to get back up again. I don't know. I think about this with our kids. How do you help them develop that resilience?
Yeah, it is weird. I just had my 20th high school reunion and my name was like on several plaques, and I was like, this is so weird. I just don't think of myself as the kind of person that gets awards or whatever. But I think I had this really amazing opportunity when I was in my 20s to run the digital business for a heritage brand called Jack Rogers. And my boss, Rachel, I was a total perfectionist from literally preschool through 20s. And my boss, Rachel, would always tell me perfection is the enemy of good. And I think that some time during that experience running that business, I really took it to heart and I became a lot more comfortable with making mistakes. And I think that's where the growth really started to come into play. And I think a lot about what it could be like when I have my own kids, because I don't think I was a perfectionist because my parents pushed me. They pushed me to read and to be curious and to do all the things that I would push my kids to do. But they didn't say if you get a B, you're going to be grounded ever. That was all coming from me. It was self-imposed. Like it was in here. And so that was a big evolution too, that probably happened around the same time that I transitioned from being like a total shy girl to like a very extroverted girl about town.
One of my favorite, bits of billboard wisdom was something that I saw a number of years ago, and it said, be brave enough to suck at something new. And I was just thinking about that when you're talking about, I'm going to go to dinner by myself and I'm going to show up at a cocktail party and like, all right, I'm going to walk and work the room. You do have to suck at some of those things and you have to be comfortable with a certain degree of suckitude.
Totally. And I think that sometimes you go to things and you don't talk to anyone. You might just sit at the bar and have dinner and be like, okay, I just had dinner. Like, I'm going to go home now. I didn't talk to anyone, or I just went to a party and everyone there sucked, or whatever. But I think that there is just so much to be said for the whole I tried of it all. And I think that's something that I really try to encourage younger people that I meet with, or my employees, or anyone to do. I think that trying things and seeing how it goes and then moving on or leaning further into it, that's really where like the cool stuff happens.
You were talking about mentorship and your time at NYU, and I think you were telling me that recently you went back and were on a panel at the business school. What was that experience, and what did you make of where students are today?
First of all, I obviously grew up in a family business, and I'm really humbled by every time someone asks me to join a family business thing. I'm always the smallest potato in the room, but I feel like I have a lot of really similar experiences.
The dynamics are the same, whether it's a 2-bit business or a 200 billion bit business.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm always really humbled by that. As far as what do I think about students today, that's a really hard one for me to answer. I didn't spend that much time at school. I do work with people who are Gen Z, zillennials, zillennial alphas, whatever. And I think that growing up digitally native it's interesting to watch. It's like a big science experiment in real time. Our store manager told me the other day that she had a client in the store who was thinking about getting her navel pierced, and she purchased the piece of jewelry. She was with a friend. We went through the whole ceremony of selling and everything. And then she started asking ChatGPT questions while her friend was there and while she was talking to the salespeople in my store. And multiple questions about, should I get this pierced if XYZ? And I thought about how insane that is it's if I just took my phone out right now and I was like, I want to ask ChatGPT a question when like my friend is sitting right across from me. That is just so weird to me and so different. And maybe I'm the weird one.
I think that standards change and expectations evolve, and there does seem to be something that is increasingly impersonal about the way in which we are using technology.
For sure.
And I don't know. I just think about it in terms of the mental health impact. I was talking with a friend the other day who's a pediatrician, and he was talking about 14 and 15-year-olds that are coming into his clinic and are dealing with very severe anxiety and depression. And he's like, have you tried putting your phone down for a period of time?
It's TikTok induced, for sure.
And they're just like, I can't. Right? Not that this wouldn't be the solve, but that's just an impossibility.
It's like substance abuse. It's literally like opioids or alcohol or any sort of substance abuse. Like your brain on TikTok is just not the same as your brain not on TikTok.
No, and that was what he was saying. He said, I asked him, I said, do you feel better or worse after you surface from 2 hours of it? And he goes, they all say I feel much worse. I said, it's the exact opposite of exercise, where the thought of doing it sounds horrible, but after you're done with it, you're like, I feel great. I'm much happier that I did that. There's no impediment to going down the blinking light path. I don't know. It'll be an interesting thing to watch as society evolves.
It's hard to juggle, I have to say. I feel like everyone is pushing me to do more founder content. Oh, people want to know more about you. And I get why. I think that a lot of people dream of being a founder or dream of living in New York or whatever. I don't know what it is that they dream about. They want the inside, behind the curtain look of everyone.
Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. I call these the hey guys videos. But anyway, I think that there is this whole desire for people to know more about what you're doing and what you're going through. I just find that it's very hard to balance the little amount of that I want to do with this whole, like, I don't want to be on my phone on Instagram for hours and hours a day. Yet I have to be for my job.
As we have lost intimacy, there is more desire for this type of seeming authenticity. And I don't know, maybe that should be unsurprising that we are yearning for some truth, but we're getting it through the intermediation.
Yeah, I think that that is very true. I think that people feel, it's like the whole video game cohort of people who feel like they're somehow being social because there are people playing the same game that they've never met, but they're still interacting with a human. And I think that in a way, experiencing how people are via their social media makes you feel like you know them, even if you've never met them, even if you don't know about their product. And I think it's very weird.
It is weird, and we look for clues as to who should we trust. And I think in a world where there's so little trust and there's so many reasons to be cautious, we're trying to find somewhere solid to stand. And I don't know, if you seem like a trustworthy person, maybe that's enough. But the way in which that's presented is very peculiar to me.
Very weird. Maybe I'll make a vlog today and I'll include our little pod on the vlog.
There you go. Switching topics almost entirely, tell us about your style.
My style, very accessorized. That's what I would lead with. I love jewelry.
An occupational hazard.
Yeah, it is definitely an occupational hazard.
Or occupational opportunity.
Exactly. I haven't always been such a jewelry girly. When you're around it so much, and it is so much a part of who I am. Like, I sleep in my stuff, which is not advised.
Everything?
Not everything, but I take my rings off. I keep my bracelets on. I keep all my earrings on. So I sleep in like over 20 pieces of jewelry, I guess you could say. But
it's your comfort blanket.
Exactly. So very accessorized. And I've definitely streamlined my wardrobe to be more of a capsule wardrobe. I really like jeans. I really like to dress casual, but I always look pretty put together, mostly because of my jewelry. I love I'm wearing a blazer right now. I love a good blazer.
It's a very nice looking blazer.
Thank you. I love denim. I wear a lot of black. I always have. I went through this weird like floral phase. When I lived in Dallas, it was COVID. I think that I really needed like like poppy. Yeah, exactly. But now that we've moved past that, I'm definitely into wearing
There's
lot of
nothing
black.
To be depressed about in the world now, and so it's okay to wear black again.
Not a thing.
Yep,
It's perfect. Pollyanna.
Life is dandy.
Life is dandy if you don't read the news.
Exactly.
Which I don't really, by the way.
You're not missing anything.
I know. If it were something I needed to know, I would know.
I think that's the right way of thinking about it. What was the first significant piece of jewelry that you ever had? Do you remember where you got it?
The first significant piece of jewelry. I feel like there are several that I want to call out. First of all, when I was in middle school, oh gosh, I don't know. There's so many that come to mind. The first piece of jewelry that I really remember loving is my grandmother gave me an opal ring that my grandfather gave her when he went to Australia. And it cemented in me just a love of opals. And we sell at my store Irene Neworth, and she has some of the most beautiful opal jewelry. So that's one that comes to mind. Also, when I was, I think, 16, my parents gave me a Kathy Waterman child charm. It's like a small gold pendant that has a child on the front. Most people usually get them when they have children, but mine on the back says Mommy, Papa, Jake, which is my brother, Shushu, which is my childhood dog, and Quince, which is my horse. I told you I was a horse girl. I'm trying to think. Those are probably like the two that come to mind, but obviously many special pieces of jewelry.
What's the most recent thing you've bought for yourself?
The most recent thing I've bought for myself, like piercing jewelry or jewelry. Last week when I was in Dallas, my team redid my right ear. So check it out. Lots of chains.
We'll get a picture of this and we'll share this in the show notes.
Awesome. But
How often does one restyle an ear if one has 18 piercings?
Honestly, my team likes for me to restyle it because people
creates new content.
Yeah, it creates new content. People buy what's in my ear. It just depends. Like, I feel like quarterly I'll do it.
What have you seen recently that has inspired you?
Ooh, good question. Is the fact that nothing's coming to mind a bad thing? What have I seen that's inspired me? From like a world perspective?
From a world perspective, from a material perspective, from a... I said the sun didn't really even rise today. It's been raining all day in New York.
I think that the thing that has inspired me over the last couple of weeks is the change in weather. I think I'm really affected by bad weather, and I think I'm really affected by good weather. And I think that when the sun is shining, I feel very optimistic about the future. Sorry that that's not like a big unlock in terms of some fabulous new piece of jewelry or anything like that, but I do feel like I'm around such pretty, inspiring things all the time, and so it's hard for me to call out one thing that I've seen lately that's been really inspiring to me.
What is happening in the marketplace, either in the jewelry world or in the business world at large, that you think is interesting, thought-provoking, worth taking note of?
I think that it's a really interesting time to do what we do. First of all, I can't be a jewelry girly without mentioning the rising prices of gold. I think that For those who are not paying attention, give us some scale of what's happened in the last 2 years. Basically, the price of gold has increased by, I think, 50%. Do you know the number? It's 30 some odd percent for the year thus far. Yeah. I don't know. In my mind, the price of gold is still $800 an ounce, and it's now 4 times that or 5 times that. I just know that pieces that I bought several years ago are now like triple the price because of the cost of gold. And I think it's really interesting because obviously it says something about the way that people are feeling. I think that during times of uncertainty, gold is one of those things that like rises because it's that feeling of I want to sleep with this. Yeah, why is that? There's this sense of when the economies of the world collapse, I'm going to have gold. Why does gold have this sort of eternal luster, to pardon the pun? I think that's why we do what we do, I guess. People love gold. It's one of those things. It's like sleeping with money under your pillowcase. I think it is one of those enduring things. I do think that it makes what we do, in a way, it's interesting because I can talk myself in and out about how it makes what we do easier and it makes what we do harder, because I think there is a story to be told about how gold is an enduring asset. Like you can pass it down, you can melt it, you can sell it. It's a signal of whatever. It's a signal of I think most of what I'm selling. You're an arbitrageur here. Yeah, exactly. But I think that it's very interesting. And obviously most of what I'm selling in both of my businesses is gold. And then obviously the other thing that I have to mention is just besides the uncertainty is just the tariffs and how insane it is if you import jewelry or make jewelry from another country. Just how I feel like everyone was talking about the cost of eggs. And I'm like, what about the cost of jewelry? Like with gold and tariffs and everything. So this is a very interesting time to be alive. And then, of course, the other thing, which doesn't really directly affect my family's business, Elong 23, but does indirectly, is just the landscape around how much has changed with department stores and vendors going direct, and just how different everything looks than it did a decade ago.
One other thing, as long as that wasn't enough dislocation, something that has become a recurring theme on this podcast, I had Sally Morrison on, who is in charge of marketing natural diamonds for De Beers, and Sam Brokma, who is the editor-in-chief of Only Natural Diamonds.
I saw Sam today.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I love Sam. But to this question of natural versus lab-grown diamonds, and I'm just so curious, are they the same or are they different?
That's a really hard question for me to answer. I have not personally and through my businesses leaned into lab diamonds at all. I have been encouraged to try lab diamonds with my piercing jewelry. I think the more, I hate to say traditional because I don't look at my jewelry background as traditional, but I think there's a lot of value and brilliance in a natural diamond. And I think that in a way, I feel weirdly like having a lab diamond is like having, it's not a fake because it has the same properties as a regular diamond, but could I compare it to having a fake Birkin bag of the exact same thing, but it's not made by Hermes? I don't know.
When does the thing get its thingness? I think is such an interesting question.
When does the thing get its thingness? You might know more than I
didn't
do.
know. That's why I'm asking you, because you're smarter than I am. So
Thank you. That's a compliment. But yeah, I don't really know the answer. I think that a lot of jewelers are having success with lab diamonds because as these rising prices continue to go cuckoo, lab diamonds, it gives you the same look for less. But I do think that there's something very special about diamonds and having diamonds that come from the earth and having that whole supply chain and scarcity and everything that comes with mining natural stones. There's just something inherently less sexy about my diamond was made in a lab, right?
If you really want to make the diamond sound enticing, tell somebody that your diamond was 3D printed. They get particularly, that's really romancing the stone.
But also, I think that there's something about, of course, when you're talking about pave or tiny stones, to me, it's not really there that I have such an opinion. But if you're looking at a 3-carat engagement ring, I think that you can tell the difference between a beautiful stone and a lab stone. You can see the difference. And I guess that's really where I have the strongest opinion. I really don't liken myself to be a diamond expert at all. But yeah, I don't know.
Are there 3 designers or brands or artists that you think deserve more attention than they receive?
That's a great question. There are a lot that deserve more attention than they receive. I think that because of the digital landscape and how it works and how expensive, this is what we were talking about during lunch, how expensive it is to acquire customers and how difficult and how you basically have to be a nepo baby to start a jewelry business. Not actually, but I think that there are a lot of under the radar, cool, talented designers that don't receive the notoriety that they deserve. And I think that the thing that's really hard for them is that you need so much money to continue to innovate when it comes to making new things when gold is at its historically high levels. But that being said, we have some amazing designers at Elong that I'm really excited about and impressed by. For example, Retrovi is a designer that we discovered in 2016. I had a design competition and she won. And I think she didn't come from a jewelry background. She was an architect. That's what she went to school for. And I think that her ability to continue to innovate and stay relevant is incredible. We work with some brands that do have a lot more notoriety because of their marketing dollars. But I think the answer really is a lot. There are a lot. / if there is one, please someone DM me so that I can pick that designer up and carry it at Elong, or so that Mark can carry it at Present.
Exactly. You can check and see who has more fun stuff, and whoever it is that wins that battle gets lunch the next time.
Yeah.
You have now started a business. You've run a family business. Would you recommend either of these activities to anybody who asked you?
I know we always talk about how hard it is to be your own boss, but the truth is...
The only thing worse is having somebody else as your boss.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I think that, kind of going back to what I said before, I love what I'm able to do because of who I've met and the platform it's given me to do so many things that I love to do. And I think for the right person, I think you have to have incredible resilience to start a company and to run a company. And I think if you don't, you should not start a company.
If people want to find you in the real world, in the ether, where do you exist?
So my stores, I have a Wildlike location in New York City on 49 Bond Street. I have a Wildlike location and an Elong location in Highland Park, which is a neighborhood of Dallas, at the Shops of Highland Park. And of course, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Alysa.Teichman.
And once we're there, you'll greet us by saying,
"Hey guys."
That's it for this episode of The Materialist. Alysa, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
That's it for this episode of The Materialist. If you like what you heard, please like, rate, and subscribe to The Materialist wherever you get your podcasts. The Materialist is a presentation of At Present Matchmaker to Extraordinary Jewelry. We'll see you next time.